Welcome to the Daily Dose of Derm podcast, your go-to podcast for all things dermatology. I'm Dr. Mohiba Tareen, a board-certified dermatologist and the founder of Tareen Dermatology. Join us as we dive into the fascinating world of skincare, beauty, dermatologic treatment, and how to enter the world of derm. Whether you're a skincare enthusiast or an aspiring medical professional, this podcast is your daily dose of knowledge and inspiration. Get ready to uncover the secrets to healthy skin and discover how to make a meaningful impact in the field.
Welcome back to the Daily Dose of Derm. I'm Natalie. Today we are on our third episode of the series all about women entrepreneurs, professionals, and how we balance the work-life challenges that come with all of it, all the good, all the bad, all the ugly, the messy, all of it. Today I'm joined by an amazing woman, Amy Langer. Many people will know the name Amy Langer because she built an award-winning recruitment firm, among many other things across her career that have just been remarkable. Amy, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
We are so thrilled to have you. I first heard about you in my young career in 2008 when I worked at Periscope, and you were just kind of getting started, just a few years into a business that you built. But before we get into that amazing business, I want to hear a little bit about where did you grow up? Let's talk about your roots. Who are you? Tell us who you are.
Sure, I'll do that. I grew up in a small farming community on a dairy farm in southern Michigan. So
Wow.
I'm a farm kid from
I
the way
love it.
back, where you definitely learn work ethic and you learn kind of eat what you grow, eat
Yeah.
what you harvest. And so that's like the original beginnings.
Okay.
I went to Michigan State University.
Okay.
I was the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree
Awesome.
and really put myself through school. And there was a pivotal time. I am a twin, and then
Okay.
I also have a younger brother. So I have two
Okay.
brothers. And farming in the 80s was not very good. And
Sure.
we lost our farm, and my mom was a single mom of 3 kids at a very pivotal time. I was about 13. My twin and I were about 13. And so at that point, I'm like, I think I need something different in my life. And that was really the start of, I have something to do. I have something to prove. What am I going to do? And so education at Michigan State changed my life. And I wanted to go into business. And somebody said to me once, if you want to go into business, you should get an accounting degree. It's the language of business. And that's what I did.
That is amazing. When you were at Michigan, did you have that itch to do something of your own the whole time? Or did you think, well, I'd like to maybe just start somewhere and think about that? Or was it just not a thought at the time?
I think always in the background was, I've always risen to leadership wherever I am. I was in a 4-H club and I ran, and then I was on the board of the 4-H club, even when I was a kid. And so it is just sort of it has always been sort of a natural thing to me to want to be able to use the best of my abilities to help be able to influence others and influence things that I care about. I guess at that time, I was just more of like, I just want to be successful in whatever I do.
Yes.
And I just want to get off the farm, and I just want to
You're
go
young
live.
and vivacious.
Like, let's go and let's do it. And so I have been very blessed with just having people in my life who say right things, and I just happen to listen at the right times. And so in college, when you get an accounting degree, someone's like, you should try to go for one of the big firms. And I'm like, okay, don't even know what that means. I really didn't have any influences or mentors of people who were already in the business. So it was kind of flying blind. Still feel like I am a little bit, actually. Although I've had
to hear you say that.
Although I always say I'm always in a room that I'm like, ooh, I gotta buck up a little bit to belong in this room. And so that was my pursuit. So I went and luckily got a job at KPMG.
That's right.
Here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's what brought me to Minnesota. And so my initial thought is I would be in Minnesota 2 years and then move back to Michigan. And it's 30 years this month that I've lived in Minnesota.
Gosh, you do not look old enough to have that be the truth. But I will say something that you just said. My grandpa used to tell us Natalie, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And what you just said a few minutes ago about being in a room and listening, I feel that knowing the course of your career, do you feel like you've always been that person of, I need to have that innate curiosity to learn, otherwise I'm not going to really know how to pivot and change as I grow a business or do certain things? Is that true of you?
Yes, well, I would say there's many times I talk more than I should. Let's be really clear. But I think this innate curiosity and wanting to learn and always knowing that there is another thing out there and never feeling arrived and always feeling like on a journey. I guess that's been a constant, and really, really curious about what people do, how people make money, how companies make money. Even my first job as an auditor, I loved it because we would go from company to company. You'd see management teams, you'd see factory floors, you'd see large financial institutions, and like that constant trying to understand what the heck was going on there has always been a joy. And really, even in the services business that I had, it was always about learning other businesses, how teams work together, what was going on. So I feel just grateful. Like I've been a study of people my whole life.
That's a great way to put it. And so then after KPMG, you moved on to Robert Half.
Yes.
And so it's a transition, right, between the two businesses based on how they're run. But
it's a huge transition.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it sounds like from what I know about you, you started and had quite a bit of travel. So as you just said, you got to know companies and you got to know kind of what makes them tick and what their needs were. But while you were there, what changed for you? Something changed where you thought, I need to do something different.
Yeah, I would say it was a fundamental change, and I'll take it back to I flunked the CPA exam twice.
You did?
I did.
That's shocking to me.
I had never flunked anything before in my life, but the CPA exam was a new thing, and really never studied a lot. And for that big exam, you actually have to buckle down. And my friends, I did so well at KPMG, and I loved it, and I was, top of my class. But my friends were passing the exam with no problem, and they were being the technical components of what we were doing. As you heard earlier, like I loved the people, I love understanding the business, but when it came down to the nuts and bolts of accounting, I was like finding myself lacking the love for the actual work.
Sure.
And so that was a time where I really started this practice of trying to understand and focus my time on what I love to do, because if I could do more of what I liked, I had found myself to be more successful.
Isn't that interesting?
And so going to Robert Half was, in one way, you were feeling like, am I throwing my accounting career away? I'm no longer this accountant, and now I'm going into sales. And say, in my mind, accountants had more, business than sales, and like, what am I doing? But I love the work. I loved the work. I loved being able to talk to business owners and CFOs and controllers and people, and continuing that understand of knowledge. And then I would have other people who enjoyed doing the work go do what I call the real work.
Right.
I just got to talk and put deals together, and then they all did the work. And so when you do work that feels natural, it's just better. So I excelled there. Really went on to a national development role in a very short period of time.
Doesn't surprise me.
Just loved it. And really traveling, when you grow up poor and rural and on a farm, you don't travel much. And so this was my first opportunity to see the country. It was really quite amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so Robert Half, there must have been some turning point for you. Was it the way that the business was being run, or was it that you just wanted something different, or you had a vision of something different from a recruiting end of things? What was that moment for you?
Well, 9/11 happened, and I quit the next day. And so it had been bubbling up for a lot of different reasons. And so like I said, at KPMG, I just loved the culture. I
Sure.
loved the people. It was
Yeah.
continuous learning, but the work really didn't suit me. At Robert Half, I loved the work.
Yes.
I liked my teams, but the culture really wasn't a culture that I saw myself in for a really long period of time. It served me well. It works
Sure.
for a lot of people. That is also where I met my business partner, and John.
Yeah.
And John and I started Salo together. And I think how companies and people handle themselves when things go well are one thing. How things happen when things are in crisis and what happens then is truly a mark of a leader and
Yep.
the culture of an organization. And I think it just became crystal clear to me that there was something else.
Yeah.
And so just decided, never waste a good crisis. We're in this really tumultuous time. In addition, I know you want to talk a little bit about family. I had been married 6 years at the time. We had not had children. Part of why I was really focused on my career and was really struggling with the decision of when that would be right, and kind of just putting it off. And as we all know, that biological clock ticks, and my husband was, he was ready for a family, and I was too. So kind of getting off the road combined with wanting
hard
something
to get off
else.
the road? I used to travel quite a bit too, and when I stopped doing that, I kind of missed the routine of it.
Yes.
Did you miss that?
Yes, but then remember the world was put into a change as well.
Right.
And so I do think these big world events have played a part in my life in a lot of different ways. It's so funny. And so, I kind of got off the road, and really, I thought I was going to get off the road. I set out a year.
Yep.
Thought I was going to have a baby that year,
Sure.
and that didn't work out.
Sure.
That was in the plan. It was already in process, and sometimes things just don't happen that way. So ended up sitting out a year. I discovered health that year.
Okay.
I really discovered I had gained weight in my time in corporate America. I really hadn't focused on what I needed for myself. I started running. I ran my first marathon in 11 months. I lost a lot of weight, and just really, and so, in hindsight, things do work out. I'm grateful I had that time to really kind of refocus, and it kind of helped me forward. So
you started Salo in 2002. You had your first baby when?
9 months later. So I sat out the year thinking I was going to have an infant, start the company.
Oh my goodness.
And the first week of Salo, I was feeling ill. And then
ill from starting Salo?
Yeah, that's what you think. And all of a sudden I'm getting sick, and I'm like, what? I just run the marathon. And lo and behold, in the first year I started a company and had my first child. So
I mean, so you're quite literally, you were making a baby.
Yes.
And making a business.
And making a business, yes. And 30 years old. Yeah, I should have taken more time to rest that year off, I think. But I didn't.
But I feel like that's the way you are, is that you're able to pivot and keep going and utilize the change as an opportunity.
Yes.
Which I think, is clear in your career. And so baby number one comes, and then you said you're a twin.
I am a twin.
And so your next set of children were twins.
We're twins, yes.
Where did that happen in your business?
So 2 years later.
Oh my goodness.
So in 2003, Max was born, and then in 2005, Hank and Logan were born. And so the first 3 years, this is a fun little thing.
Okay.
In the first 36 months of the business, I was pregnant 18 months of the 36 months, and then had 3 children under the age of 3. So
did everybody hear that? I mean, that's insane. I mean,
and the company in those 3 years went from 0 to 21 million in revenue. So it was
you were hustling the whole time.
Yes.
You were hustling the
I
whole time.
even say it out loud. I sometimes did I miss up one of those facts? Like, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That doesn't
How did you-
include like nursing, like that doesn't include
Yes.
having the child.
No,
but yeah,
that's
18
just
of
the
the first
pregnancy
36
piece.
months of the business, I was pregnant.
That's before they're out. And
Yes, and then they're out.
there's
It's
another
harder,
thing.
actually.
I have a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old right now. And
Yeah, so you know.
So I know that we call it controlled chaos.
Yeah, that's the same age difference
Yep.
is that I would
The
have.
16, 17 months,
Yeah.
something like that. That's unbelievable. How did you manage it? Did you have family help? I mean, obviously your husband at the time was very supportive of you starting this business.
Yeah.
Did you have help? I mean, or did you just kind of rally and do it all?
Well, none of us do it all.
Yeah.
And that I think is a misnomer that we should take off it all. There are sacrifices and there are things that we miss, whatever choices that we make. And so I think this, like, how do we have it all is you can have it all in your definition, but getting clear on what that means. So we didn't have a lot of family here.
Okay.
My sister-in-law moved back from New York. She helped us in the house quite a bit with Max. And then because really we self-funded the organization, so we're not even talking about the money side of which I went 22 months without income.
Wow.
We had mortgaged our house to have enough money to start the company, and we had to start getting that back.
Right.
And so it was challenging times. So I remember the first distribution check we took out of the company was to pay childcare.
Oh,
and that's it. It went straight there.
So expensive.
And then you're like, So yeah, it was a gamble on all the fronts. My husband at the time was very supportive, our families generally, but none of my family lives here. And, I think one of my tips is pay for as much help as you can afford. And
yes, that's such a good tip. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah. And I mean, that's hard because you don't know when you're in it what to ask for.
No.
I think that's part of it. But, especially if there's two working people, would have loved if my husband would have stayed home, but he didn't want to. And, he went on to start his own business too. And, so there's a lot of things to keep everything working. I just got really clear on, especially the things at home. Like, I think this is the first year I've actually done laundry in my own house. Which is
amazing.
crazy because I was like, I'm not going to spend time on these things, but I love baking and cooking.
Yeah.
And so doing that with the children and having maybe people help
Yep.
prep, but not pull that together. Or
Right.
at times, they did.
Mhm.
So I think not being afraid of getting other people to do things in your home. And I think society pushes so much on, especially on women, that you're supposed to be doing these things.
Mhm.
And so I think you just have to stand your ground.
It is hard to have that balance. I mean, I always try to think about, I want to be 100 at work, but I want to be 100 at home. But sometimes it's really hard to be 100 in both places.
Yes.
And like you said, with society's kind of sets women up in a professional role to be able to be 100 in both places. I listened to Hoda from Good Morning America. She talked about this being 100 in both places. And she said, I just would come home some days and I couldn't be 100. I had to be 88 or whatever the percentage was for the day. But that's the best I could do at the time.
And I tell my kids even today, I'm like, I did the best I could today. I recognize that it wasn't that good. But I didn't go into today intending it to be this bad. Just so you know.
My head was in a different place at the time.
I mean, now I have a bit of hindsight. I have two 19-year-olds and a 21-year-old. And the challenges shift and the joy shifts in lots of different ways. And I actually wish when they were younger, I would have been okay at showing more of that vulnerability of being able to say, I'm only at 88 or quite frankly, 8 on some days, and just seeing like, it's okay to have off days at home and to be real around them. I think sometimes I tried to put on such a like, okay, you know, I remember sitting in the garage going like, okay, it's not their fault today was a rough day. Like walk in with a smile on. And you can walk in with a smile on, but also just sort of recognize that the family's all there to support each other, and it's not just me. But that's honestly taken 20 years to figure out.
Well, I will take that advice from you.
Yeah, it's okay. They want to be there for you too.
Yeah, the career that you had, this business was growing really fast, right? And then at some point the recession came through and that business model probably had to change. How did you manage? I'm just thinking about a lot of women have stresses in their work life, and they also have to manage what's at home with their children and sort of those relationships, make sure they're nurturing those, but also nurturing a business or where they work, the work that they do. What advice do you have for working professionals, working women, when things get hard at work, how to balance both?
Yeah. I'm just going to take the word balance out because I think if we start with the idea of it being balanced, you already start off with not being able to be successful. Yeah, it's not balanced. It's not. And again, I'm talking with hindsight because I'm not in it right now. It's so joyous on the other side. But, you know, if you think about it, it's like you're not in a balanced part of life. You are working in your career. You are having to put in the extra hours, the extra time, the extra thought. You haven't made it yet. And I still feel like I'm searching to make it. But then also your kids have very high physical demands. You're wanting to be there. And so I think just this recognition of it's going to feel a lot right now. It's going to feel different than it did before you had children and before you were this far in your career. And so I think just giving yourself a little break, like these are going to be hard days and I'm going to get through it. And eventually the kids are going to be able to dress themselves. Eventually they're going to be able to pour their own bowl of cereal. And then eventually they're going to be able to drive. Then eventually they're going to go off. And so I think looking at it in stages and not feeling like this, I mean, it's a long stage, 18 years, let me get it. But I think if you take it in bite-sized pieces of like, this toddler stage requires one part of me.
I'm in that now.
Yes, and and it's very physical. I remember it like they're on you all the time, you're moving, it's very, very physical. And then there will be a time, I promise you, when you'll be like, I just wish they'd want to hug me today.
Everybody always says that.
I know, and it's hard if you could like pick out a weekend here and a week out here and exchange them. But the mental demands when they get teenagers and how you talk with them and what they're experiencing and what they're going through. Sometimes when you're going through things at work, those mental challenges are hard too. And so I would say my advice is remember this is a moment. And the moment's long. Days are long, years are short. The days do get long, and how you put it in and to say, even the difference between a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old is different. And so say, for the next 3 years, what does balance mean in these 3 years or this year? And just kind of take it in bite sizes, I think is better than this. Is this forever? Because it definitely shifts. Yeah,
you do. I for sure have had those moments where I go, what am I doing? I mean, my head's flying off.
Yes.
But I think that's really good advice. As you progressed in your career and your kids got older, I mean, were you still traveling quite a bit between the offices in Minneapolis and Chicago, or how did that look for you as the kids got older?
Yeah, when they were little, we didn't travel. We had one office, and then I think it was right around the recession, or during it, I remember us doubling down by opening another office, which has its own interesting stories. And then we started traveling to Chicago, and also, you know, one of the things you said, how do you find that? Find people in your life who are like you and that have kids, and maybe even people who are just a slight stage above. And you see through other women, like it's possible for you to have a career and to have your kids well adjusted. That's all we want. Happy, well adjusted kids. Whatever they go on to do. And I think sometimes when they're young and you're in this, you doubt that that will ever happen.
Right.
And so you have to hold on to the certainty that it will. And so I think having other people who have careers like yours, you know, I can't even tell you the number of people like, oh, you own your own business, so does that mean you're flexible? And I'm like, no. Or do you work part-time? No, I don't. I mean, I employ, 300 people, 500 people, 1,000 people. No, I don't work part-time. And so I really found a lot of benefit in peer groups. I was involved with Women's Presidents Organization. So grateful to have found them young in my career. And you think, okay, I have this business, I have these kids, I can't dedicate any amount of time outside of that. And I think that is the single best thing I've ever done is to make time every month to go and be around people who had similar, and those are some of my best friends today.
That's awesome. That's really good advice. I think there's always that fear of, if I do X, is that going to have repercussions on myself or my kids if I spend an extra 3 hours doing that? But you broke it down so well. It makes a lot of sense on why A, it's rewarding, B, you've built more relationships. I feel like you're a connector.
Yes.
You like to be with people, you like to connect people, you like to you're really good at having those relationships. But I think it's really good advice for people who are maybe fearful of taking that risk, if you will, to embark on doing it.
Well, if you don't intentionally seek out a peer group, your peer group will be your kids' friends' parents.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's
so true.
Okay. And that's okay. They're awesome people. Some of them are some of my closest friends, and I love it. And you spend a lot of time together. But also, what is the intentionality about a peer group that incorporates your whole life, not just your family life? And that was the difference for me that I think really helped.
Well, what a different perspective you probably learned from this group of people, and sort of eye-opening, I'm sure. With all of your success, I'm sure that they loved having you there as well.
Yeah. And I think the different generations of women in one group, whether, all of them were entrepreneurs, but some of them, were 20 years older. Some of them did have kids in university already, and you're like, how am I ever going to get there? But you see a vision of yourself. And I think whether it's in companies, whether it's wherever, if you can see a vision of yourself in somebody else, it's really nice, which is kind of nice that you're doing this for other people.
Yeah, I think there's so many people that wonder about how to do it. And it sounds like from your advice, there's really no right way to do it. It's just kind of doing it.
Yes.
Getting your feet wet and just doing it.
Yeah. And having good support.
Yeah. And so I love this for people who are listening that are like just on the edge of wanting to do something or start their own business or grab a new career role or kind of advance to the next level. But just from a business standpoint and a mom standpoint, is there anything, because we like to be really honest on this podcast, is there anything that you regret about the way that you did things, whether it was through starting this company or with your family? And you can say no, but I feel like some people in the hindsight things say, I learned this or I learned that.
I think I would do it more of sacrifices versus regrets.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing that all of those things allowed me to get to here. And actually, my middle child asked me recently, he's like, do you wish you would have spent more time with us?
Oh.
And I said, do you wish? And he's like, yeah, maybe.
Oh,
and yes, and
yes.
Yes. I mean, you couldn't. And, this allowed us to be able to do it. And like you said, you want to be 100% everywhere you were. And I feel like I spent quality time, but it wasn't all the time. And so, made lots of poor decisions. Sometimes the wrong nanny, sometimes making a decision to go to an event where I could have been home. And so
Sure.
I think I think I got better at like hyper prioritizing and sticking to it. And so when I think about your balance word, which I used to say work-life explosion, not work-life balance. And I think if you can agree with yourself, what am I going to be happy with? And so I'll give you an example and then stick to it. Okay. So I think when anybody gets off balance, it's, are you doing what you said was okay? And so because I was in the world of networking, I could have been at an event every night, or I needed to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so it comes to this, like, if I skip it, will my business suffer? Is this an opportunity cost for what I should do? And so it was always a constant battle. 4 mornings a week, I would for sure have breakfast with my kids. Every 4 mornings. Now, luckily, everybody's an early riser, so that means I got up at 4:45 a.m.
Yeah.
I did my workout or did my run. I got fully ready for work, but like still in pajamas. Went down, had breakfast, and then the second it was time to go, I'd rush up and change, and then walk out with nobody touching me.
Yep.
Right? Like that was
Yes.
that meant that I got up early in the morning, so is that a sacrifice? Yes, it's hard. It's dark out. You know that it's dark at 4:45. Also, evenings, the same would be true. And so it wasn't always the same morning, the same evening. So when I felt off, it's because it was a week of late nights. It was a week of things that
all piled up.
If I think back to the school, I was on the school board, and I remember one time one of my sons said, "Why are you always at our school when we're not?" And I'm like, right. And he was right. And I'm like, because that's where I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily good with little kids. Like you would not see me in a very good spot if I had to wrangle these little kids around. You guys I love, like lots of them, that's a lot.
It's too much for mom.
And also being able to say, like, my gifts are in organization and strategy and helping your school while you're here. My job is that the school continues on far beyond us. And just like, I think talking to them way before you think they can handle it about why you do the stuff you do, why it's important to you, what it gives to you, how, and like, I think I could have done a better job of not making excuses for it, but just say, like, I love this. Like, this is good. And I love you. So
I love both.
I love both.
My 4-year-old will often ask, Mom, why do you have to go to work, or why can't you drop us at school, or these little things that come up. But for him, they're big things, right? So I try to rationalize them, but I do tell him I love my job and I get to see my friends at work, and I do really feel fulfilled there. I use smaller words, but I want them to know, like you said, that
I always say I get to go to work
too. Yeah,
I get to go to work.
Yeah.
Like, this is my work, and your work is school.
Yeah.
And I still say that to them. I'm like, this is my work, your work is still school. And like, this is good. And somebody gave me this tip a long time ago, is when you are spending time with them, saying, this is our time.
That's a great idea.
You have work time, I have work time, you have school time, but this is our time. And like, calling it out and reminding them of, this is, we will always have things in, but this is our special time that is only focused on you.
That's really good advice. And being able to set the boundaries. Did you often feel pulled because you were, an owner of this salo business? Did you often feel pulled, like, okay, let's just say you're doing story time at bedtime and you're getting messages or emails, or did you feel pulled while you were having that time with your kids?
I had shut off time.
That's
like
awesome.
When I got home, no one really ever had phones at our table, even when the kids got older. Like, and I think that's because we modeled it of,
That's awesome.
It's a break. I was pretty stickler on bedtime. Like
Yeah.
when the kids went to bed, if
Yeah.
they started to get up, I would be like, no,
Mhm.
like
You were
absolutely
in
not.
your room
I am now
now.
done. Like I started this early. Now you go to bed, and I think that would be a tip. Like if they want to get up later, absolutely not.
No.
Like bedtime is bedtime, because that's where I think you start to get angry, right?
Well,
You're
yeah,
like,
you
if
get
you get out of
frustrated.
bed and frustrated, it's like,
Yes.
wait a second. And
Mhm.
so definitely had emails and stuff after
Yeah.
kids went to bed. And, I would say as long as, sacrifices and getting real, you also need time with your significant other.
Yeah.
And I'm now divorced.
Mhm.
That did not make it through
Okay.
all of those changes, and honestly that was never the intention.
Right.
I wish it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But if you think of what suffered, I would
Sure.
say the marriage
Yeah.
suffered for the sacrifice of the greater good. And so
Yeah. That's the way life happened.
so keep in mind that is something to nurture as well.
Yeah.
And I think getting through all of those things
Mhm. You
is,
lived a life.
is a goal.
Yeah, I'd say so. And then at some juncture, you had been in this business for it was 20 years.
20 years.
And I know you said that you haven't fully arrived even yet.
Yes,
I mean, that I feel like that's just your perpetual outlook on life. But from a career standpoint, did you feel like you had made it at that point where you wanted to step back from having a lot of the control of the governance of what went on inside of your business? What did that feel like for you, and how does it feel now?
Yeah, it feels great now. There's definitely, again, with having peers who have been through different things at different stages, I just feel so fortunate that I watch them be successful and struggle through different aspects of it. I started to pull back in 2019. I promoted a CEO at the time, in effect, to try to have, and it actually worked, to have the company operate with a senior leadership team that wasn't the founder. So John and I intentionally put that in place. And it also set it up very nicely for sale. So once we sold the company, John and I weren't required to go with the company because we had the team in place.
Yeah.
So I would call it, I did it in baby steps. In 2019, I was still the owner, but I wasn't the CEO. But yeah, I could still go in every day. And then we had another world crisis, the pandemic, that forced us home and actually really kind of forced the company. I couldn't just walk into a meeting one day. I couldn't just like the team did have to decide how to do it. And if you were invited into a meeting, it meant you were invited in on Zoom. And really, as we all know, I mean, I can now do it. And like all of a sudden, the work that we were doing 20 years ago that everyone thought was crazy became the gig economy.
Yeah.
And so from the pandemic, our company grew, almost doubled in that time. And so we were on another just fast growth trajectory. We had sort of set the company up to be able to do it. And I think we were just ready. I think the company was ready for different investment.
Got it.
And it was like, now you're at this time. It's crazy for those of you thinking of starting a company. When you have nothing and risk everything, it's hard. Yeah. But you're like, well, I mean, how much do I have to lose? And it's crazy. Your risk tolerance actually, for some people, or I'll just say maybe not for everybody, but for me, my risk tolerance went down. Like all of a sudden it's like, now I'm not risking everything. Like this is nice. It's nice not to be going from paycheck to paycheck every day. It's kind of nice to have it. And I think the company needed just sort of a different level. And so, at different stages of an organization, you have to say, are we doubling down or what are we doing? And it just felt like a really good time to be able to do it. I had also started doing some board work. I'd really been doing a lot of work in the community. I'd started more transitioning kind of to healthcare and just sort of the kids. It was so awesome because from 2019, I really did have, I would say I was still probably working 50 hours
Wow.
a week,
Yeah.
but it wasn't 80.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I had more time as the
Sure.
kids were in high school. And you might not know this, but because it feels like a lot now, but they kind of need you in different ways
Yeah.
when they're older. And they kind of just need you there. Not that you're talking all the time or reading or playing games,
Yeah.
but they want to seek you out on their time, not on your time. And so I just feel really fortunate that I was a tad bit more flexible during that time with them.
You're right. These world events that have happened along your career have sort of helped you change, the way that you did
and
things.
do it. Yeah, it was really good. And the team that kind of took over at the time, they had pivoted to more technology. They had done some things in the organization to set us up to be able to allow us to grow. And so yeah, it seems like a fairy tale now, although if we just had a whole podcast on mistakes, we could easily do that too. I'm not trying to say it was easy, like any of those moments. Incredibly challenging, incredibly. I think if I can set my eye on a prize, like if I can set my vision for myself along with the business of the company, along with the vision of the family, that sort of helps give you something to look into.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what are your kids pursuing? Are any of them wanting to do what mom did or is doing?
No, I don't think so. Well, we'll see. I do think we'll get at least one entrepreneur, if not two in the bunch.
Okay.
Maybe three, actually. My oldest is pursuing marine biology.
Love it.
And he's excited about that. The middle child is at liberal arts, and he will do something in either business or engineering.
Sure.
Trying to figure out which way, and then the youngest is engineering.
Love it.
So yeah, they're all.
You must be really proud of them.
Yeah, I am. I think what's more important is they're proud of themselves.
Yeah. And
that's really what we try to do. Is like I have always had this philosophy: is I'm raising you to be an independent human. And I think when we look back, is they've had different steps of independence, and if you can take your own guilt out of the way, and like when you get home, like, no, I have to do everything for them because I've been gone all day, and like, and I'm failing, and I'm
jumping
doing
into my brain.
Yeah, I'm doing it, and it's like actually this independence and having them be able to do things on their own and see that both people in a family can have careers. And if you think about it, if both people are working, it's a partnership at home. And a lot of the pressure of society still comes on the mom. It just does. And I think our own internal pressures come that way. We just have to be nicer to ourselves and nicer to each other. I think women sometimes are hard on each other. If you make a choice to stay at home, you justify that choice, and sometimes that comes sort of with a feeling that people who work like that might not be the right choice. And those of us that have chosen to work sometimes are like, well, I work because I would never be able to stay home. And I just think we have to be nicer to each other. Like we all are doing the best we can every day, and my choice shouldn't have a reflection on what your choice is. And so
I've learned that with my group of friends, and I'm in a women's group, and everybody has a different tolerance, right? For various things in life, whether it's time managing and spending time with kids, or whether it's your career. I've sort of learned to just respect whatever way people want to do it. That's their way. Yeah. And if it works for them, great. Yeah. But it takes time to kind of figure that out. Yes. And I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, you have 3 kids in 3 different schools at 3 different universities and different things. And, I'm saying it's not empty nest. It's more of like a revolving door of where you see and what you go. And where it's parents' weekend. And, and now they get a choice of whether they come home for fall break or go do something with their friends. And you love that communication. Yeah. Weeks before, because that's how you plan, but you get it hours before sometimes. So
you're surprised.
You're managing different things.
Yeah. So now in this new chapter of your life, you've since sold the business and you've been traveling a bit. How else are you filling your time?
So I'm on a couple different boards. I'm involved with a startup again, which I'm really
How
excited
exciting.
about. I've spent a lot of time in sort of the business startup community in terms of helping founders, a lot of times women founders. I just love the entrepreneurial journey. And so I'm an executive chair, so I'm working sort of part-time helping a founder, amazing woman, but has had 4 different businesses. And this one, she doesn't want to run, but she wants to keep owning. So we put a board in place, we've hired a president, and really excited to sort of see the trajectory. So I'm sort of helping her be a founder who's involved, but
that
allow her to do something else. And I'm also really hopefully helping this company get poised for growth and scale. And so it's really fun. It's just a joy. I love that work, and board work is fun too.
Do you think you'll ever depart from it all? Or will you always have your hands in something? I mean, I know like when my dad retired, now he's like driving a Zamboni at Braemar Ice Arena and he's a golf starter or whatever. He could never just like sit around and do absolutely nothing. I don't know if it's in our human nature, but would you ever let go of having your hands in different pots in the business world?
In the business world, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm also now an investor in different businesses and like to do it. I think it would be hard to completely eject myself because I just enjoy it. What I know is I continue the practice of what is bringing me joy in my life and what is detracting from that joy. And I really try to solve for what's detracting, whether I get it out, outsource it, do something else, or I intentionally accept it. Like, okay, for the next 3 years, I don't like this, but I'm going to do it for whatever these reasons and just try to at least neutralize it. And so in that joy category, it's kind of morphs and changes and kind of what we're doing. So
I love that. Any extra advice you want to share before we wrap up for any new moms, any moms that are working, any variation of how that life work, not balance, but life work scenario? Any advice you have for people listening?
Yeah, I would say, kind of in that, what is working for me, what is not. I would definitely find time once a year to do your own personal strat plan. And I do mine on my half birthday because it doesn't fall on New Year's. It doesn't fall on the beginning of school. It just happens to, and it's like a marked time. And, I started journaling it years ago and I still bring it back out. Like some threads continue to hold. I need to be with people and I need total solemn quiet time. How to put those together in the right order. But other things like that you need at certain times of your life sort of fall off. And so how do you set an intentionality around your time, around who you are, about how you spend your work time, about how you spend your personal time? I think those that do that with intention every year tend to maneuver in a more intentional way.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm curious, when is your birthday? Because I want to know what sign you are.
I am a Pisces.
Oh,
March 3rd. Okay. Yes.
No surprise there.
So September 3rd, I just did my, kind of planning for the year and try to see how you add more in and how you don't. And
I like that. She's a Pisces, everybody. Well, listen, this has been really engaging and fun and fulfilling for me as a mom of 2 young kids to learn from you. And I know that everybody listening will be super thrilled to have all your insights and carry those with them.
Thank you. Just give yourself a break. You're doing okay. You are doing okay. And okay is enough. Okay is enough.
Good advice. Thank you, Amy, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Daily Dose of Derm. Stay curious and stay inspired.